I knew Alex Salmond for 30 years as his political advisor, parliamentary colleague, and even as his legal counsel. More importantly, he was my mentor and friend. He has rightly been hailed as one of the greatest Scottish politicians of this or any generation, although Alec, half chuckling, would have challenged the words "one of" in that last sentence. In 1990, when he became SNP leader, that description would have seemed impossible. The SNP was the fourth party in Scotland, a fringe act trying to get onto the main stage. By the time he departed as First Minister, the SNP had complete dominance of the Scottish political landscape. In Scottish politics, his success was both spectacular and unrivaled. But what made him such a special politician? There was his extraordinary drive for success. You could see it as he redefined the modern SNP in the 1990s. Even then, he knew that to succeed, he had to become the greatest coalition builder in Scottish politics. He championed Scots Asians for independence, New Scots for independence, Business for Scotland, determined to embrace all of Scotland in his campaign. If Winnie Ewing embodied the spirit of the SNP in those days, and Neil McCormick was its undoubted intellect, Alex Salmond was its beating heart. Restless, relentless, impatient for change. In government, he created the Council of Economic Advisers to let Scotland tap into some of the greatest economic thinkers on the planet. His mission wasn't to improve, but to utterly transform. His approach was one of unrestrained and unapologetic ambition for Scotland. But beyond his drive, it was also his strategic thinking. Alex always seemed several steps ahead. The prolonged negotiations leading to the Edinburgh Agreement were a masterclass. By the end of it, I'm not sure David Cameron knew his own name. Alex, meantime, had secured everything he wanted. Most importantly, a referendum made in the Scottish Parliament and beyond legal challenge. Until his death, he remained the sharpest strategic mind in Scottish politics. Not many 66-year-old men start new political parties. But in 2021, that's exactly what he did in founding the Alapa Party. He believed that when faced with new challenges, the nationalist movement needed to find new solutions. And so he created a new party designed to maximise the nationalist representation at Holyrood. This was a man who, right to the end, never stopped thinking, probing, challenging. He made strategic mistakes, of course. The most obvious was resigning as First Minister in 2014. I think if there's one thing in his political career he would have changed, it would have been that. And I wonder how different Scotland might be today. It's also fair to say that Alex loved an argument. He revelled in public debate. Like all big beasts of politics, he lived for those moments. And that maybe explains why he excelled at Westminster. One of the great ironies about Alec is that despite being the foremost nationalist of his day, and whilst going on to be the most successful First Minister Scotland has ever had, he was in many ways shaped by the House of Commons. He learned to take a political punch and return it with interest, to be quick-witted, the master of a brief, politically nimble, media savvy. A striking feature of the response at Westminster to his death, from the Prime Minister down, has been genuine and deeply held respect for one of the great parliamentarians of recent decades. Alex wouldn't necessarily have admitted it, but I think that would have meant a lot to him. That said, not every debate was a success. During the referendum campaign, I was drafted in to get him match fit for the first big debate against Alistair Darling. How tragic it is to think that we also lost Alistair, a massively significant Scottish politician, exactly a year ago today. But in the debate, our big problem was the question of currency. The line from the no side was essentially a veto on Scotland using the pound. That wasn't the reality, of course, as Mervyn King, the former governor of the Bank of England, later confirmed. But as political roadblocks go in the middle of a referendum campaign, it was an absolute corker. We prepared in Dundee 2 podiums, a small audience of advisors. I played Alistair Darling. I was well used to losing to Alex in these debate sessions, but this one was different. Not because I was better than him, but because I had the trump card of just refusing to accept the pound could ever be used. I frustrated and goaded him for about an hour, simply ruling out the pound and asking him what his plan B was. Truth be told, I was quite enjoying it. Maybe too obviously so. Eventually he'd had enough. He insisted we swap podiums and arguments. Okay, if you're so smart, let's see how you get on. The answer, I have to tell you, was not very well. So if any of you think that in the first debate our approach to currency lacked coherence, I would simply say this. Given it emerged from a process of me playing Alex Salmond, debating against the actual Alex Salmond, who at that time was pretending to be Alistair Darling, it really could have been a lot worse. Happily, of course, Alec won the second debate in Glasgow, during which Alistair conceded that Scotland could indeed use the pound. So in today's spirit of national unity, we'll call it a score draw. Alex was proud to be a fishing MP and fiercely loyal to those he represented in his beloved North East. In 2017, he gave an interview I discovered the other day, which I want to share. He said this: "If I go to the pearly gates and my maker says, 'What did you ever do with your life as an MP?' and all the rest of it, I might well say, 'I helped raise the Sapphire.'" For those who don't know, 4 men were lost when the fishing vessel Sapphire sank off Peterhead in 1987. Alex led the campaign to have the Sapphire raised and the deceased returned to their families. Some of those families are here today. The point is this: he understood that politics is about people, and that at its core it is about community. But it was for his national leadership that he will probably be best remembered. In leading the SNP to victory in 2007, Alex Salmond turned Scottish politics upside down. As his helicopter flew to Prestonfield House to meet the waiting cameras, we still hadn't won the election. Undeterred by such minor details, Alex asked that I start writing his victory speech, which he subsequently delivered on the lawn. It started, "Scotland has changed, for good and forever." That, of course, was true. The first ever nationalist government. Never again would the SNP be a party of permanent opposition, and none of it possible without Alec. That government remains, for many Scots, the best government of the devolution era. Its success was driven by the precarious nature of minority government and a daily sense of our political mortality. It also gave rise to one of Alex's least impressive predictions. The late, great Neil McCormick and I joined up as part-time special advisors despite having other full-time jobs. "Don't worry," Alex said. "It's a minority government. It'll be over by Christmas." That was 2007. He served for another 7 years. In fact, 17 years later, the SNP is still in power, and I see before me the 4th SNP First Minister. The reward came in 2011 when he went one better and broke the electoral system by winning a majority, and so securing the 2014 referendum, a fundamental moment in Scottish history. This is not the day to rerun that campaign, but it is worth recording that Alex was unshakable in his belief that despite all that the No campaign might throw at us, our role was to inspire, to offer ambition and hope. That's how he wanted to win. Not just because it's who he was, but because on the far side of victory, he wanted to unify the country and move forward as one. Nation first, always. Alex Salmond will forever be a pivotal figure in Scotland's story. He changed a nation. He inspired a country. And he enshrined the ultimate sovereignty of the people of Scotland to choose their own constitutional future. History will certainly remember him as a man of talent, charisma, and substance, but also as a political leader of courage, vision, and intelligence. He dared to dream, and so should we.